How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Michael Thomas. The elite starting wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints turns 29 today, and my intention with this episode, just like my other episodes, is to focus on how he's been able to impact the game and, of course, his teams as one of the elite performers within his sport from a micro level, as of course I zoom in and look at what he does game in, game out, season in, season out for every single team that he's played for ever since he stepped into the limelight. And of course, I'm going to take a step back and look at how he's been able to affect the game on a macro level. He is a record holder in the NFL, as a matter of fact. He has the most single-season receptions in a season, and of course, I'm going to get to that. And of course, when it's said and done, even if he doesn't have a jacket, Michael Thomas is definitely going to be remembered as a player who most definitely dominated at the height of his era. And I really hope that once his ankle gets I hope that his ankle gets better soon so that we can see some more good football out of Michael Thomas, hopefully before he's all done and retires from the game. So with that said, I'm going to get into the story of Michael Thomas. Originally from Los Angeles, he would go on to play high school football in Woodland Hills, which is actually where I used to live. He went to Taft High School, which is down the school from where I used to go to middle school. He would go on to lead the state in yards and touchdowns in his high school season. He would go on to commit to play at Ohio State, where he would go on to play college football, and at college football, he would go on to be a star himself. Michael Thomas's very first season with Ohio State would be his freshman season in 2012. In 2012, Michael Thomas would go on to play 11 games as he would play for an Ohio State team that would finish with a 12-0 record. They were completely ineligible this season as they were, I forget the exact story this exact year, but they were not allowed to play in the tournament. However, within the 11 games he played, he had 3 receptions for 22 yards. And after his freshman season, he would be redshirted his sophomore season. And in that sophomore season in 2013, Ohio State finished 12-2. They ended up losing in the Orange Bowl to Clemson as a top 10 team. Going into 2014, Michael Thomas would be named he would be a redshirt sophomore, but he would be a starting wide receiver for an Ohio State team that eventually would go on to win the National Football Playoff, as Michael Thomas would play in all 15 of those games. He had 54 receptions for 799 yards and 9 touchdowns. That would be the most yards and tie for the most touchdowns that he would have in a season for Ohio State. Once they made it to the college football playoff, in which I believe was the very first college football playoff ever played, they would go on to beat Alabama, and then they would go on, because they beat Alabama by a touchdown in the first round. This was when Alabama had Amari Cooper, I believe. And then they would end up beating Oregon in the national championship. And this is back when Oregon had Marcus Mariota, back when Marcus Mariota was a Heisman winner back in college. But of course, Ohio State would go on to win that title, and Michael Thomas would go on to be a college football national champion, which he still holds on to, especially to this day. But following his redshirt sophomore season, he would return to Ohio State for his 3rd year of playing. In his redshirt junior season in 2015, which would be his age 22 season, he would go on to start 13 games for an Ohio State team that finished with a 12-1 record. They would finish as a top 4 team as they finished outside of the playoff. They would end up winning the Fiesta Bowl versus Notre Dame that season. But within that season, after playing 2 less games, Michael Thomas would finish with 56 receptions, with 2 more receptions for 781 yards and 9 touchdowns, which is virtually on par with what he had done the year before, but in 2 less games. In those 2 seasons at Ohio State, he would establish himself as one of the better Ohio State wide receivers. And after those seasons, he would be named, of course, to the third team All Big Ten in 2015. And that would be the last season that he would play there. And after those 3 years at Ohio State, he would be taken in the second round of the 2016 NFL Draft with the 47th overall pick, as he was drafted by the New Orleans Saints, by the team that currently has him now. Currently looking at that draft, looking at notable names, Joey Bosa was taken, Ezekiel Elliott, Jalen Ramsey in the top 5. This is when Jared Goff went first overall out of Cal to the Rams. Other notable names, including the player that was taken 2 picks ahead of him, Derrick Henry out of Alabama, went to Tennessee. And just to get a sense of the talent that was coming out in 2016 around him. In 2016, Michael Thomas's rookie season, his age 23 season in 2016, he would earn his way to be a starter as he started 12 of the 15 games in a season where the New Orleans Saints would finish with a 7-9 record. They finished with the same record as the year before, as they had missed the playoffs for the 3rd year in a row at this point. In Michael Thomas's rookie season, he would go on to establish himself as one of the best rookies of his class. He would finish with 92 receptions for 1,137 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I think it's fair noting that his quarterback was Drew Brees, who of course was in the height of his powers. And Drew Brees, of course, loves to spread the love around. And Michael Thomas was a very readily available receiver. But at the same time, Thomas was available. He was the one that was getting open and was the one going out there and catching those passes. And from the get-go, he has been a 1,000-yard receiver in all full seasons that he's played. So I do think it's worth knowing that, the receiver gig is a two-way position. It's a two-way relationship. But, of course, it's still worth knowing that Michael Thomas did get those yards himself. Following that 2016 season, the New Orleans Saints would return for his second season with the team. In his age 24 season in 2017, Michael Thomas, I believe, would truly break through as he would start 14 of the 16 games in a season where the New Orleans Saints finished with an 11-5 record. They would win the NFC South for the first time since 2011, since Drew Brees had won his last Offensive Player of the Year. As in that 2017 season, Michael Thomas would go on to finish with 104 receptions for 1,247 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. That'll be the first time he finished with 100 receiving yards. The second time he had at least 90 receptions, because 90 receptions in a season is still an incredible feat. He would finish with 1,200. He would finish with over 1,000 yards for the second time in his career. He finished with over 1,100 for the second time. His 5 receiving touchdowns are the least amount that he's put together in a full season. Alas, in just his second year in the pros, after being a second-round draft pick, Michael Thomas would be named a Pro Bowler. And then I think it's, of course, just worth noting that he did this, of course, on his own, clawed his way up there. And at the end of that 2017 season, the Saints would end up, or I guess before going, and I think it's worth noting that this was the year where Alvin Kamara won the Offensive Rookie of the Year and Marshawn Lattimore won the Defensive Rookie of the Year. So the Saints were, of course, improving on offense and defense. Once they made the playoffs, they would end up winning in the wild card round to the Carolina Panthers. And then they would end up losing on some playoff magic to the Minnesota Vikings. And that would be the end of the Saints in Michael Thomas's second year. Michael Thomas's third year would be the first year in which many people would see him as one of the league's best wide receivers. His third season would be his age 25 season in 2018. In 2018, he would start all 16 of the games he played. So far, that's the only time he started all 16 games. In a season where the New Orleans Saints would finish with a 13-3 record. They would finish with 2 more wins in the previous season, and they would win the NFC South for the second year year in a row. Michael Thomas would finish with 125 receptions, which led the league, and he would finish with 1,405 yards, the first time he had 1,400 yards. Third season in a row, he had at least 1,000. He had 9 receiving touchdowns. That was the second time in his first 3 years he would do so. And in addition to being named a Pro Bowler for the second time in his first 3 years, he was named to the first team All-Pro after finishing as the NFL's receptions leader. And of course, that all makes sense. Once the season came to a close, the Saints would end up beating the Eagles in the divisional round, as the Eagles going into that year were the defending champs. And then in the next game, they would end up losing in the NFC Championship to the LA Rams, as the Rams were the team that would represent the NFC in the Super Bowl 53, as they ended up losing to the Patriots that year. This would transition into Michael Thomas's 4th season with the team, which would be his 3rd and final Pro Bowl season to date. In his 4th season, he would go on to start 15 of the 16 games he played in a season where the Saints would finish with a 13-3 record, as Michael Thomas was actually named the Offensive Player of the Year in his last full year playing in the league. He would lead the league in receptions, yards, and yards per game. He had 149 receptions, which was 24 more than his career high at that point, which was the league's high the year before. He would finish with 1,725 yards. To this date, this is the only time he's led the league in receiving yards, and that was 320 yards more than he had done the previous year. He would go on to finish with 9 receiving touchdowns, which was on par with what he had done the year before and his rookie year. He would finish with 107.8 yards per game. This would be the only season in his career he would average over 100 yards per game. And like I said, in addition to being named Offensive Player of the Year, he was named to his 3rd straight Pro Bowl, and he has not been named to a Pro Bowl since 2019. He was named to his 2nd straight All-Pro first team, making sure that his season the year before was not a fluke, even though it was still Drew Brees throwing him the ball. And at the same time, being named to the Offensive Player of the Year. This is the only time in his career that Michael Thomas has been named the AP Offensive Player of the Year. And then, of course, following the season, the best season in Michael Thomas's career, they would end up losing in the wild card game in overtime to the Vikings on a touchdown. And like I said, this would be the last full season he played. As in 2020, Michael Thomas would go on to start 5 of the 7 games he played in a season where the Saints would finish with a 12-4 record. Michael Thomas would go down with an ankle injury, this would effectively knock him out of his age 27 season. And then when he had a chance to come back in his age 28 season, he decided that he didn't want to make it any worse, so he did decide that he would undergo ankle surgery, so he would not return at all for the season, as he will make his return this next upcoming season with the New Orleans Saints. But he's definitely a player that when he's on the field, he is incredibly dynamic, and he definitely cannot be ignored as one of the best players in football. Being awarded the Offensive Player of the Year at a quarterback-dependent position is a very incredible feat, and I do think that he deserves, of course, the patience of waiting until he gets back and seeing what he can do when he gets back. But with that said, I do want to take this time to, of course, wish Michael Thomas a happy 29th birthday. And just to if you ever get a chance to watch him, I would recommend doing so. He wears number 13 for the New Orleans Saints. And once all of today's exhibitions are done, I will come back with another episode. I want to thank the College Football, the Pro Football Reference websites, of course, the ESPN, the NFL, the Wikipedia articles that I needed for the facts and figures. And of course, with that said, once everything's done today, of course, I'm going to come back tomorrow on Friday, March 4th for another episode. But until then, I want to thank everyone for listening. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with more of this tomorrow. Peace out. But if you ever get a chance to watch Michael Thomas, he's wearing number 13. So please watch him, and let's see what happens between now and next year by the time he turns 30. Peace out.